Gay pride parades all over celebrated love with a hint of resistance. In San Francisco, revelers wearing rainbow tutus and boas held signs that read, "No ban, no wall, welcome sisters and brothers," while they danced to electronic music at a rally outside City Hall. Frank Reyes said he and his husband decided to march for the first time in many years because they felt a need to stand up for their rights. The couple joined the resistance contingent, which led the parade and included representatives from several activist organizations. At the jam-packed New York City parade, a few attendees wore Make America Gay Again hats, while one group walked silently in the parade, wore Black Lives Matter shirts as they held up signs with a fist and with a rainbow background, a symbol for gay pride. Still, others protested potential cuts to healthcare benefits, declaring that healthcare is an LGBT issue.
Thousands of people line the streets everywhere for gay pride parades this weekend. The event carries a tone of celebration and political resistance this year, with possible threats to gay rights under the Trump administration, so some say. Parade organizers in New York and San Francisco have focused heavily on protests this year, and activists are appalled by the administration's cutting of federal guidance that advises school districts to let transgender students use the bathrooms of their choice. Meanwhile, in New York City's parade, folks were seen wearing Make America Gay Again hats, with another group wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. Others held signs saying healthcare is an LGBT issue. This year, it's a bit of a different atmosphere, Grace Cook, a 17-year-old from Chicago, said. Being here feels more impactful, like something we have to do.
Here's senior foreign affairs correspondent Greg Palcott.
South Korea getting into the missile launching act today, test firing a medium-range missile capable of hitting targets in North Korea. South Korean President Moon Jae-in monitored the launch.
I believe in dialogue, but dialogue is possible when it's backed by strong defense. And engagement policy is only possible when we have security means that can stand up to the North.
According to Fox News reporting, there is a buildup this week of resources at North Korea's nuclear test site, as well as a test firing of an engine that could be used in an ICBM capable of targeting the U.S. Even North Korea ally Beijing is becoming concerned.
The UN Security Council resolutions have clear restrictions over North Korea ballistic missile technology. China opposes any actions that violate the resolutions of the UN.
Capitol Hill is speaking out about the Kim Jong-un regime as well.
If it gets to a red line where we believe there is a real threat of North Korea delivering a nuclear weapon, which they have nuclear weapons, to our allies or to us, we have to have a military posture capable of destroying that infrastructure.
And Pyongyang broke its silence about the death of Otto Warmbier, buried yesterday in his hometown in Ohio. The 22-year-old American college student was released last week after being held by North Korea for 18 months in an unresponsive state, suffering from brain damage. A North Korean government spokesman claiming reports Warmbier was tortured were groundless. That North Korea was targeted by a smear campaign, and Warmbier was the victim of policies of the administration of former President Obama. An Obama spokesman said there had been no higher priority than the release of Americans held in North Korea. President Trump will meet at the White House next week with South Korean President Moon. Discussions of what should be the current policy to rein in an increasingly aggressive North Korea will be front and center. James.
Greg Palcott in London, thank you.
It's been hot recently, and the southwestern United States was hit with highs in the triple digits. Although it will cool down in that region soon, there are still 23 million people dealing with an excessive heat advisory. Recent forecasts say it'll reach 116 degrees in Phoenix this weekend, 10 to 15 degrees hotter than average. Heat warnings are now in effect until Monday evening in central Arizona, southern Nevada, and southeast California. Experts recommend spending time in public areas with air conditioning, such as libraries, malls, and government buildings.
Hi, Eric. A tragic story indeed. Initially, Cynthia Randolph said her 2-year-old daughter and 16-month-old son locked themselves inside her hot car where they tragically died last month. Well, it turns out the 24-year-old lied to police. According to a new criminal complaint from the police say Randolph admitted she actually left her kids inside the car on May 26 as a form of punishment. Temperatures outside that day were in the mid-90s. Randolph says she went back into the house, smoked marijuana, and took a nap for 2 or 3 hours while her little girl and boy were inside the sweltering vehicle. When she woke up and went to check on the children, they were unresponsive, and then the 24-year-old mother proceeded to try to cover up the horrific ordeal. Police say Randolph broke the car window to make it seem like her children had locked themselves inside. According to the complaint, Randolph initially told the Parker County Sheriff's Office her kids were exposed to extreme temperatures in the car for no more than an hour, but her story changed and eventually the truth came out. Randolph told investigators she punished her kids after they were caught playing in the car, and when her 2-year-old little girl refused to get out, Randolph shut the car door to teach her a lesson. She claimed she believed her 2-year-old girl and 16-month-old son would get out of the vehicle on their own when they were ready. Both children were pronounced dead a half hour after police were notified, and Cynthia Randolph Eric is now facing 2 counts of causing serious bodily injury to a child. Just horrific story.
There sometimes just are no words.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
According to the Israel Defense Forces, Israel launched strikes on Syrian military positions Saturday. The strikes were close to the two countries' disputed border in the Golan Heights. The action was a response to what the IDF said were more than 10 projectiles fired into Israel from inside Syria. Blaming it on internal fighting, the IDF described the projectile fire as errant. The IDF said Israeli aircraft targeted 3 positions from which the projectiles were fired. The strikes included hits on 2 tanks belonging to the Syrian regime.
According to Reuters, on Sunday, Israel claimed responsibility for attacks on Syrian military targets after stray shells from fighting in Syria's civil war landed inside the Israeli-controlled Golan Heights. No injuries were reported from the Golan Heights strike. However, the Israeli military wasted no time in responding, saying, targeted 2 artillery positions and an ammunitions truck belonging to the Syrian regime. It was the second day Israel, who has largely remained on the sidelines, retaliated to Syrian fire. Organizers told BuzzFeed News police in Istanbul, Turkey are using plastic bullets, dogs, and some type of smoke to disperse people trying to gather for the city's annual Pride Parade. The parade was slated to begin at 5 p.m. local time. Organizers released a statement an hour later saying police were preventing them from gathering and marching. The parade was banned by Istanbul's city governor. He said in a statement the parade was not permitted because of safety and public order concerns. The statement read, additionally, it's also seen that there are very serious reactions against this call by different segments of society on social media platforms.
Sunday, Chelsea Manning enjoyed her first Pride March since she was released early from prison. The former U.S. Army intelligence analyst was sentenced to prison for releasing classified documents. A photo of Manning, who publicly came out as transgender in 2013, was featured on the American Civil Liberties Union Twitter account alongside the caption, "Happy First Pride March, Chelsea Manning, hashtag NYC Pride 2017. The 29-year-old also tweeted that she was honored to represent ACLU at this year's Pride.
Crisis in Marari has sparked a humanitarian situation. The local government is struggling to contain it. Almost 350,000 people have fled the city and surrounding areas, with many staying with relatives and friends outside the city. Thousands of others, though, will end up at the IDP camps. The crisis follows a shock attack by ISIS-aligned militants, which captured the southern Philippine city of Marari last month. Hundreds of thousands of its weary citizens have fled the horror of life under the control of jihadists. The horror has been compounded by a relentless campaign of bombing by the armed forces of the Philippines.
Huddled in a remote tent on a windswept plain, these Mongolians are choosing someone who will fix the finances of their country. A man who raises horses, a judo champion, or a feng shui master.
I hope there will be change for the better. I don't know what else to say. I only say what I know.
Candidate Entbold Mayagombo describes himself as a horse breeder from the country. But last month, an audio tape was leaked to the public in which he and 2 of his party's officials are said to discuss a multi-million-dollar bribe to reshuffle government posts in 2014. Khaltma Batoga is a judo champion and helped Mongolia win its first Olympic gold medal. His critics have questioned some of the deals which helped to build his personal property fortune. Ganbata Sangku is a one-time trade union leader who ran a feng shui practice before entering politics. His opponents say he accepted $44,000 from a South Korean Christian group, which critics call a cult.
Mongolian democracy is getting mature. However, corruption is getting big, and people it doesn't mean that people will tolerate it forever.
Wedged between Russia to the north and China to the south, Mongolia transitioned from communism to democracy in 1990. At one point, it had the fastest growing economy in Asia. But falling commodity prices have hit its mining businesses, and many efforts to attract foreign investment have failed. Mongolian voters may have to decide whether trying to save their economy is more important than allegations of corruption. Rob Matheson, Al Jazeera.
After a Quran was found burned, stuffed with bacon, and handcuffed to a fence at a Sacramento mosque on Saturday, detectives have opened an investigation. The Sacramento County Sheriff's Department was contacted Saturday afternoon about the desecrated holy book. Officials said hate crime detectives responded. The Masjid An-Nur Islamic Center is the largest mosque in the Sacramento area. In fact, it's next door to the sheriff's central station. The Quran was hanging by a handcuff attached to a temporary fence between the mosque and the sheriff's station.
The fire at Grenfell Tower in West London killed at least 79 people and set off a chain reaction of outrage which is still spreading. In the UK alone, 600 tower blocks are now being examined. Dozens have already failed the safety tests. In London's Camden district, tower block residents have been evacuated until remedial work can be done. Of the local authorities where high-rise buildings have failed safety tests since the Grenfell Tower fire, only a few have been made public so far. In London, Camden Council's Chalcots estate is joined on the list by tower blocks in Brent, Barnet and Hounslow. Suspect panels have been found at Wythenshawe in Manchester and 9 tower blocks in neighbouring Salford. And on the south coast, in Plymouth and Portsmouth, problem cladding has been identified on a total of 5 tower blocks. But this is now a truly international issue. In 2014, this block in the Australian city Melbourne went up in flames when its cladding caught fire. 3 years on and the cladding still hasn't been removed, despite a court order demanding it. And checks on 171 other Melbourne tower blocks revealed a startling reality.
51% of all buildings that were audited, 1 in every 2 buildings in fact did have a combustible cladding and in fact didn't meet the Building Code of Australia.
But experts believe the Melbourne safety failings reflect a much wider problem.
Why would that be unique to Melbourne? Why, in fact, would that situation not exist within Sydney? Why would it not exist within Brisbane, other areas of Australia? In fact, you know, potentially around the world.
We advocate hard for a lot of fire safety issues. Largely, a lot of that work falls on deaf ears. You know, a lot of pushback, particularly when you're dealing with building industry and big economic issues.
In the UK, the causes of the Grenfell Tower fire will be the subject of a public inquiry taking many months. The impact of it is already being felt by displaced residents and nervous lawyers. Of course, product guidelines and legislation vary from country to country, but a clear picture is starting to emerge, and that is that combustible cladding has been fitted to tower blocks all around the world, despite local regulations. And the spotlight is now on those regulations and on the regulators for allowing that to happen. Paul Brennan, Al Jazeera, London.
A southern Utah wildfire has grown, reaching 62.7 square miles by Saturday night. The fire near the town of Brian Head is 8% contained and has destroyed at least 13 homes, fire officials said. About 1,000 firefighters and support personnel are battling the blaze, which started June 17th by someone using a torch to burn weeds. More than 1,500 people have been evacuated from several hundred homes and cabins. Evacuation orders were given in nearby alpine communities that are generally known for second homes as a weekend getaway for Las Vegas residents.
If there's one natural resource you'd think we'd never run out of, it's sand. I mean, just look around. Sand covers a large part of the Earth's surface, and it's pretty much indispensable for our civilization. We use sand for glass and for concrete, which we use to make our houses, our roads, bridges, skyscrapers, stadiums, you name it. And while this kind of sand may be perfectly fine for making sand castles or playing a little beach volleyball, it's kind of useless for those industrial applications. Don't take my word for it. We found a sand expert.
And not all sand is created equal. There are differences in the shapes of the sand grains, the composition, the actual minerals that the sand grains are composed of, and there are differences in the actual size distribution of the sand grains.
A United Nations environmental report says that, mainly due to rapid economic growth in Asia, the mining of sand and gravel greatly exceeds the natural renewal rates of those substances. That's right, we're looking at a sand shortage.
We use millions and millions of tons of concrete every year, especially in the developing world. China, for example, they say in the past 4 years has used as much concrete as the United States has used since it was formed.
Shipping sand in bulk over long distances can be very expensive.
One example is Dubai, the large construction projects that have been happening in that part of the world. Surrounded by desert, sandy desert, but it's not the right kind of sand. So they've had to either dredge sand from offshore or import sand from Europe or other places. And so the costs can become prohibitive.
And then there's the impact of global warming. Some studies suggest that as sea levels rise, by the turn of the next century, most of California's golden beaches will disappear.
And in part 2 of our series on sand, we look at how illegal mining is hurting communities in Namibia. That'll start running from 7G on Sunday here on Al Jazeera.
As Amazon continues to gain their confidence in the consumer marketplace, retailers in traditional brick-and-mortar establishments have growing anxiety over the possibility that convenience could eliminate the need for connecting with actual people in those types of establishments. Amazon announced the purchase of Whole Foods and its Prime Wardrobe shipping service, which created a noticeable dip in the stock prices of many grocery and department stores. The dip could mean fear surrounding impending job displacement for many people who make their living in retail and customer service. The changes could have a real economic and political impact across the country.
Summer heat enveloping Washington, yet nothing compared to the increasingly heated debate in the halls of power in the U.S. Capitol over the future of how people in America get health care. What's at stake? According to critics of the controversial Republican proposed health care plan, the answer is clear: lives.
When you throw 23 million people off of health insurance, people with cancer, people with heart disease, people with diabetes, thousands of people will die.
But the Republican plan, which was unveiled on Thursday, promises to, among other things, end the requirement that all Americans get health coverage or else pay a penalty. Republicans view that as big government taking over health care. They say their new plan shifts health care back into the hands of the consumer.
Ensuring that pre-existing illnesses are covered, ensuring that there are no lifetime caps, ensuring that individuals, again, have the kind of choices that are necessary so that the system is responsive to people, to patients, not responsive to government.
We are done. There is mostly agreement in the Republican Party that the Affordable Care Act, the universal health care plan signed by Barack Obama, needs to be replaced. The problem Republicans are having is agreeing on replaced with what? The new bill promises to reduce the monthly fees, known as premiums, that consumers pay to their insurance companies for health coverage. But even within the Republican Party, there is doubt.
Look, I've been in medicine 20 years. I'm 54 years old. Premiums have never gone down. They're not going to go down after the Republican bill.
President Donald Trump has a lot at stake. While he has mostly left the details of the new bill up to the Republican congressional leaders, he campaigned hard on the promise to change the health care system installed by President Obama.
No vote has been set on the health care bill, but it could happen as soon as this week. All Democratic lawmakers are expected to vote against it, as expected, but at least 5 Republican senators have said they plan to vote against it as well. And if that happens, the bill will not pass and would signal a major defeat to President Trump's agenda. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera, Washington.